to the Java Energy Hour. My name is Gabriel, here with you with Curious Sports Pulse. Check us out, CuriousSportsPulse.com. And also check us out on Twitter at SportsPulse100. Now, before anyone gets on me about the name of the show, I just want it on the record and known that my senior superlative was most likely to run around the world with a cup of coffee in his hand. So, coffee has been an integral, vital part of my life. And speaking of coffee and speaking of providing that energy, first of all, we are the number one podcast who says that we're going to last an hour. We're probably going to push closer to 20, 25 minutes. I'm not going to lie, just, the Java Energy 20 minutes doesn't sound as good. I'll fully concede the name could use a little bit of a rework, but again, the main focus was making sure coffee is somehow in there. But you know who doesn't need a cup of coffee? Do you know who is exactly what the doctor ordered? That was a mixed metaphor that didn't land, but moving on. Jrue Holiday showed exactly what's needed come the postseason. Jrue Holiday showed exactly why, in my opinion, the Milwaukee Bucks should have and could have done more to make sure that he was on the team. I get it. And so we're gonna speak on the Indiana Pacers and the game last night. I actually really like where the Indiana Pacers are right now, and I still have them coming out of the East. Granted, this is coming from someone who had the New York Knicks coming out of the East, so take that with a grain of salt. But more, we'll speak more on the game from last night specifically, and why I'm not at all sold on this Boston Celtics team still, and why I still like the Indiana Pacers to eventually emerge. I think they're fine. I really do. But first, I want to focus on Jrue Holiday. Now, I'll admit one of my blind spots is salary cap and how that works with contracts, dead money, luxury tax. Goodness, try saying that 3 times fast. Luxury tax, luxury tax, luxury tax. Nope, can't do it. But the point's the same. I'll admit when it comes to moving money around, or no, really what you can do is you can defer the 5th year to the 27th year. And so then this gives you space. I don't know how that side of it works. And to be truthful with you, I don't really feel like spending the time to learn that. Why? Because I see every year in and year out, teams and fan bases will say something can't work, and then magically someone somehow 3 or 4 all-star, 3 or 4 Pro Bowlers will end up being on the same team, despite me hearing for 6 months about how there's 0 cap room. So I don't really buy into it. Now, I'm not a believer that it's a myth, the cap situation. I fully believe that the bill comes due eventually. However, we have seen good front offices, we have seen creative GMs just find ways to make it work at least on a year-to-year basis. And do they suffer later on when they choose to go all in? Yes, absolutely. So a little bit of a nuanced cap take. Again, I'll fully admit what I'm about to say maybe isn't realistic in terms of the conventional cap rules. What I'm saying is they could have found a way. And and they being the Milwaukee Bucks, and what do I mean by this more specifically? If you are the Milwaukee Bucks, you know you have Giannis Antetokounmpo. Is he the best player or is he the second best player behind Jokic? That's up for you to decide. But you have someone in Jrue Holiday who certainly from the guard position offers everything that you would want for someone to play alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's someone who's not in need of the ball constantly in his hands. Not a terrific three-point shooter in terms of he's not Steph Curry, but he's for sure not Ben Simmons either. Yeah. So we could get murdered for this later on the internet. He's closer to being Steph Curry than he is Ben Simmons. And by that, I purely mean that if he's out there with Antetokounmpo, you're not worried about spacing in terms of clogging the floor. With Ben Simmons, you 100% would be. So that's all I mean by that. But more importantly, what he does for you on the defensive end, what he does for you on the in terms of the intangibles, what he does for you within the team culture, what he does for you in terms of a guy who doesn't mind being the second, third, or even fourth option on some nights, that's irreplaceable. So you bring in Damian Lillard. Probably you had to give up Jrue Holiday in order for the trade to go through, right? Jrue Holiday first goes to the Blazers, and then the Celtics pick him up from the Blazers. Right? It was a little bit of a he went there via route kind of thing. But I just wish that the Bucks had found a way to have Holiday, Lillard, and Antetokounmpo all on the same team. Now, what else would they have had to given up? How could it have possibly worked? I don't know. And again, that's why I gave that whole spiel, that whole monologue, that whole pretense of I don't really focus on how trade situations work or how the salary cap works. That's not my forte. And I feel like it's not worth my time to investigate that further because there are dumb general managers out there, there are dumb front offices out there, and there are questionable decisions made every day where it feels like if I did take the time to learn that, I feel like more or less any conventional rules are at any given point very much out the window, depending on how an owner is feeling or how a GM is feeling on any given day. So for the most part, I firmly believe that anything is possible when it comes to that. Shout out Kevin Garnett. And I just feel that there could have been a path. There's a world in which we could have seen in this year's playoffs Jrue Holiday, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Damian Lillard all on the same team. And now, who's at home right now? The Milwaukee Bucks. And what is one piece? What is the one piece that they're now desperately looking for so that they don't have an early playoff exit next year? Jrue Holiday or someone like Jrue Holiday. Someone who, even if needed, even if you have two stars already, and you need both of them to sit out due to injuries or just for rest, you need both of them out at the same time. You could run the offense through Holiday for a couple plays, for a couple possessions, and not be completely capsized. That could happen. You would feel comfortable with that. But most importantly, just like what we saw yesterday, what he brings for you night in and night out, that veteran leadership, that veteran experience, and that intensity, that mindset of, hey, it might not look great right now. We might be losing at home to a team that most people had us beating comfortably. I think the line closed at 10.5. We might be down right now. We might need a wing and a prayer, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that we have a chance. And that's exactly what we saw from Jrue Holiday yesterday. And so I think the Bucks now they're now one Jrue Holiday away from potentially being in the Eastern Conference Finals themselves. So this is kind of a caution. What we saw on display last night is you want to bring in someone dynamic who's a great scorer or a great offensive player. It doesn't matter the sport. What are you giving up? And do you have a contingency plan for all of the other things that a certain player brought to your organization? In this case, the Milwaukee Bucks clearly didn't, or they thought that their contingency plan was going to be Doc Rivers. Hashtag, I'm sure he was just a consultant from the beginning. But moving on. The Boston Celtics, I'm pretty worried about. I'm very much worried about the Boston Celtics. Let's be real. They were very, very fortunate. They escaped at home last night against the Indiana Pacers. That is a game that they should have lost. Now, you can't take what they did at the end of the game away from them. In terms of they're the ones that pressured the ball, they made it tough on Indiana, and they forced the critical turnovers when they needed it the most. And then Jaylen Brown makes an unbelievable shot to force OT. And I firmly disagreed with what Mike Breen and Doris Burke were saying in terms of you can't let him get the shot off, or how do you not foul, or they're playing too tight. You can't. What's the alternative in that specific case? And I'm talking about the pre inbounds movement before Jaylen Brown got the ball, and as they're contesting that shot, I think it was Miles Turner, if memory serves. As Miles Turner is contesting that shot, what else is he supposed to do there? So you can't foul beforehand. That's no good. You have to wait for the ball to be inbounded. I think that's poor grammar, but we'll live with it for today. And you have to play touch tight. I know that you're fine technically with giving up a 2, but you don't wanna just make it be a give me 2 so that it's a quick 2 and that they extend the game. So then they're just 1 miss free throw away on your end from only needing a 2 to tie. So I like that they played touch tight. I like that they they were pretty sound on their switch and their communication. They weren't asleep and they were playing it straight up. And that specific scenario, they played it exactly right. All you say at that given point is hats off, Jaylen Brown. You made a hell of a shot. And you don't want to. I could see maybe he could have had a hand vertically up, but at that point, he was closing out. He doesn't want to foul. At that point, you just say, okay, if he makes this, I mean, his shoulder was basically in his face. At that point, you just say, all right, well done. You got one. Run that play, run that exact play, that exact sequence back another 10 times. How many times will Jaylen Brown make that shot? 2, 3? You live with those odds. So I firmly disagree with that narrative from Mike Breen and Doris Burke on you can't let that shot get off or what are they doing? No, they played it exactly right. That was just you can't even say, in my opinion, great execution because it was a of course it was great execution, but what I mean by that is that's a shot that he knows that he probably shouldn't take in any other circumstance, and it was a prayer and he made it. The prayer got answered. So it's not even as much about great execution as he just made a really tough shot. All right, the distinction there being that the way specifically that was drawn up with a shoulder in his face and him being off balance and shooting over someone who's taller than him and that's the live or die moment of the game. That's probably not exactly how you drew it up. But he made it, credit to him. But in the overall scheme of things, what did I not like about Boston? Still too ISO centric for me. Don't love that. Don't love how, for whatever reason, Jason Tatum continues to rely on his summer that he spent with Kobe Bryant and believes that he has this needs to prove that he has the Mamba mentality of taking just terrible contested shots or rush shots. Jaylen Brown a little less so to a little less degree, but the same criticism. The only difference is he didn't spend the summer with Kobe 1 year. The best offense was what was initiated through Derek White and Al Horford. That was the best overall team offense of the Boston Celtics. So and then defensively, we're gonna get to the Indiana Pacers in a moment, but defensively, individually, are they good defenders? Yes, but this is the NBA. The advantage always goes to the offensive player. And I think, especially with Al Horford, now they found some ways at the end, but the Indiana Pacers, if that's how the Boston Celtics choose to overhelp, especially with Al Horford, then the Indiana Pacers are going to have even more open shots moving forward, and that is something that will heavily play in their favor. So Boston Celtics, they did good. They did what they needed to do. But I think if you let's pretend that this series ends in 5 games. It's going to be a tough 5 games. So I and I personally won't be surprised if Boston finds a way to still lose this. Now, Indiana Pacers just needed a little more composure at the end. I think they were a little overexcited and a little bit of the lack of deep playoff experience with this unit showed, I thought. Really, though, there were either one decent, even halfway decent half court possession or one inbounds play from winning the game in regulation. And if that happens, we're here on a Wednesday morning with a completely different narrative. I think they're fine. What most impressed me was when they chose to run their offense early in the shot clock, how they kind of could take advantage of any mismatch that they wanted. Especially with Siakam and Turner. It really seems like they solved that puzzle. Now, where they ran into trouble was when they let Halliburton play a little too ISO for me and not get something going, either a pick or a screen or just any type of ball movement. When they kind of were over relying on Halliburton to just create in an ISO one-on-one situation, that's where they ran into trouble. And let's be real, that's not Halliburton's best aspect anyway. Now, do I think that he coughs the ball up the way that he did late in the fourth, moving forward too many more times? No. Hashtag sneeze. But I still would like to see them try to get into something a little earlier in the shot clock so that they're not forced to take a rushed contested attempt. But if they just fix that one thing, then they're not even in the position of needing to inbound the ball to ice the game. Just a couple more quality half court possessions, and they're sitting with a nice, comfy 1-0 lead in this series. So I think it's far from panic time if you're the Indiana Pacers. I 100% feel much better about the Indiana Pacers this morning. Now, could I come to regret these words? Absolutely. Again, I had the New York Knicks advancing to the NBA Finals. But looking back on that game, there was a lot that had to go right. There were a lot of dominoes that had to fall for the Boston Celtics to end up pulling out that win, and they did. They just happened to get all 100 dominoes in a row where one flips over a mouse trap and the other one is off a table and it has to bounce just right. All right, and one of the dominoes had to hit a pendulum that then hits another pendulum that then activates a jack in the box for the next domino to fall. And is that because of the efforts of players like Jrue Holiday and because of Jaylen Brown and because of Derek White at the end? Yes. So again, this isn't to take credit away from them, but the fact remains that they were in that scenario where everything had to go right at the end. Now, I hear the counter argument of, well, that's going to be an emotional loss for Indiana. It's going to be hard to bounce back. They'll have seen it as they let one get away. But we saw this in the Knicks series. I wouldn't use the word gritty with this Indiana Pacers team necessarily, but for lack of a better word, they are gritty and they for sure show resilience. And they're going to bring it each and every night. So even if the Boston Celtics storm to an early 20-point lead in game 2, I'm not counting the Indiana Pacers out. I think they're going to be fine. Tyrese Halliburton for much of the game looked like the player who people thought he was, and can be. He went through a little bit of a yips during the regular season, but we'll see. We'll see about 5-6 minutes in if those concerns reemerge. But for the most part, I think he's fine. I think the Pacers are fine, and I will not be surprised if we leave TD Garden after game 2 knotted up at 1-1. But that's all we have for today. Check us out, KiraSportsPulse.com. Check us out on the Twitter at SportsPulse100. And we are here on YouTube each and every day. Go check out what Picho's doing over there on Footy News, giving us the latest and greatest soccer updates from all around the world. My name's Gabriel. You can follow me at Big Ten Gabriel. But again, more importantly, follow us on Twitter at SportsPulse100.